Continuing our angelic theme from last time, I thought I would answer some specific questions about the nature of angels that some viewers asked in older videos. So stick around if you want to learn more about angels. Hello, my name is Father Ambrose Little, and I teach philosophy at the Dominican House of Studies. Welcome to Aquinas 101, Big Questions, Little Answers, the series where I do my best to answer your big questions about philosophy, theology, and more. To begin with, one viewer asks, do angels have free will that enables them to choose self rather than God? The short answer to this is yes, they do have a free will. To unpack this a bit, St. Thomas reminds us that all creatures are given appetites by God that order them to what is good for them. And because humans and angels have an intellect by which they can know things, they also have an appetite associated with the intellect, which is called a free will. Why does having an intellect make our will free? Well, it has to do with the power to understand things. St. Thomas says that the thing about the intellect is that it, quote, apprehends the common notes of goodness, from which it can judge this or the other thing to be good, end quote. In other words, we can perceive goodness in everything, and as a result, we have to use judgment to choose between the things we perceive as good. Therefore, we don't just see something good and then pursue it, but we can actually ask, ought I to pursue this good thing? So St. Thomas says, quote, wherever there is intellect, there is free will. It is therefore manifest that just as there is intellect, so is there free will in the angels, and in a higher degree of perfection than in man, end quote. With that in mind, St. Thomas then tells us, quote, an angel or any other rational creature considered in his own nature can sin, and to whatever creature it belongs not to sin, such creature has it as a gift of grace, and not from the condition of nature. The reason of this is because sinning is nothing else than a deviation from that rectitude which an act ought to have, whether we speak of sin in nature, production, or morals. That act alone, the rule of which is the very virtue of the agent, can never fall short of rectitude. But every created will has rectitude of act so far only as it is regulated according to the divine will, to which the last end is to be referred. Thus only in the divine will can there be no sin, whereas there can be sin in the will of every creature, considering the condition of its nature. What all this means is that even though our free will is given to us by nature to seek God, we nevertheless have the ability to choose something other than God and fall into sin. The next question is inspired by how St. Thomas thinks angels know things. St. Thomas teaches that angels do not learn in the way that you and I do. We learn by observing the world and taking in information. But St. Thomas says that since angels are immaterial, they do not observe the world in the way we do, and so they do not take in information in the same way. Rather, they are given the forms of knowing by God at their creation. So one viewer asks, quote, does this mean that in Aquinas' view, angels never learn new things or grow in any kind of knowledge? What about when Christ's return occurs, and that day comes, wherein before that day they didn't know what day it would be, end quote. This question is complicated, so let's make a few distinctions. When it comes to natural knowledge, angels have all the forms or information they need to understand the world, so they do not learn anything naturally in the sense that they do not receive any new forms in their intellect. However, just because they have all the intellectual forms they will ever need, that does not mean that they are thinking about all that information at once. St. Thomas thinks that just as we will think about different things at different times, so angels will consider different bits of information at different times and not think about everything all the time. So they are not always thinking about all the things they know. However, angels also have supernatural knowledge, that is, knowledge which God gives them which is not natural to them. As St. Thomas says, quote, with regard to things divinely revealed to them, there is nothing to hinder them from being in potentiality, end quote. This is knowledge that comes through grace by seeing God in the beatific vision, so they can learn new things through God's revelation to them. That is why they probably don't know the day of Christ's return. Well, that's all I have for you today. Thanks for joining me for this episode of Big Questions, Little Answers. I look forward to seeing you next time. Until then, may God bless you and keep you in His grace. I hope that answers all your questions, but if not, please let us know by submitting your big questions using hashtag #AskAFriar in the YouTube comments and on social media. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with your friends, because it matters what you think.